Way back in 2020, Genshin Impact set the bar for what was to be expected from the company by the players as far as for storytelling and just overall quality in a gacha game. Now, if you were to look at the gacha games that were out during that time, right before Genshin Impact came out, they are nowhere near the quality as games like Genshin Impact or even Wuthering Waves. They really did set the standard of what is to be expected, but I do think that a game like Wuthering Waves is actually raising the bar, and games like Genshin Impact are falling behind as far as for how they present the story. My name is AJ, and let's get right into it. So if we take a look at 2.4 for Wuthering Waves, sorry, I'm thinking 3.4. 2.4 for Wuthering Waves. They really did do something completely different that I have seen from these big gacha titles in the space, which is actually split up their story into two parts. Now, the reason why I think this is so good is for a couple of reasons. Number one, it helps with player retention and it keeps you just interested in the game, because not only this happens a lot when you are playing gacha games, is typically if you're maybe a free-to-play player or maybe you're a spender and you pull for a character, let's just say like Cartethia, but you don't really like Lupa or you don't plan on pulling her, well then the second half of the patch is honestly really boring and there's not really much to do other than just doing the events, getting on, doing your dailies, maybe doing the event, and then getting off the game. But when they split up the story into two parts, not only do you get to do something in the first half of the patch, which maybe is either pull for the new character and then do the story, maybe do some exploration, do some of the events, but then when the second half character comes around, now you have something else to do with the rest of the patch, because typically the patch is pretty dead. If you were to look at player numbers as far as for the influx, typically have a high influx of new players that come in at the beginning of the patch, and then the patch the game kind of like slowly dies off towards the end of the patch and it spikes back up. But I think with them releasing the story into two parts, it actually helps with player retention and it makes people want to actually come back to the game, because there's actually something to do in the second half of a gacha game's patch cycle. So with them splitting it up, it gives us something to do in the second half. Now, I'm going to give you guys my initial or my final thoughts about the story kind of towards the end of this video, but I wanted to really kind of harp on them making this change because not a lot of other gacha games are doing this. And typically, for example, if you look at a game like Genshin Impact or even Honkai Star Rail, their stories happen to be really long and they're really hard to digest. Now, what Wuthering Waves is doing is they're making the story short and very palatable, and them actually splitting it up into two parts, well, like I said before, helps with player retention, but it also doesn't help it helps with you not feeling burnt out when you come back to the game, because the story is not like, oh gosh, I have to do another 8-hour story quest like in Honkai Star Rail. Now, thank goodness they added a skip button for those of you guys like myself who don't like sitting through the story, especially in Honkai Star Rail. But if a game like Honkai Star Rail or even Genshin Impact was to split up these main story quests in half and split it up, one half of the patch and the other half of the patch is the other part of the story, I think this would really help with people not feeling so burnt out and like exhausted from playing a really long story. Now, do I think they should shorten their stories? Absolutely. I think 4 to 8 hours of just yap and like a couple minutes of cutscenes is really unacceptable, especially for a game like Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail, which have really kind of raised the bar and made it where these other gacha games really have to meet them where they're at. And so I think that because Wuthering Waves is now raising that bar and saying like, hey, not only is our story good, we have a skip button, but our story is so good that we have to make it good enough that people don't want to skip the story, and it's also short enough where they feel like they're not spending 8 hours, a 8-hour shift of their day to play story, right? especially when it's just text and barely things going on. So they are really just setting the bar as far as for what is expected now, probably from future gacha games that have come out, because people are going to be like, well, Wuthering Waves has short stories. Wuthering Waves story is really well done. The cinematics are good. The facial expressions, all that kind of stuff. So everything that Wuthering Waves is doing as far as for the improvement on their story is huge. Now, if you guys were to compare Wuthering Waves way back in 1.0 versus 2.0, world of difference as far as for voice acting and just direction of how they present the story. They have really stepped it up, and so I kind of wanted to give them their kudos for actually putting together a banger story. Now, I thought that 2.4 was an amazing patch. I thought the story was phenomenal. I actually was talking to another content creator and I was saying like, man, like I played the story and it felt like I was watching an anime, but then in the fight scenes in an anime, I actually got to play the game. And I just think that Wuthering Waves presents its story so well, and because it's short and it's palatable to like a good majority of the player base, I think that it really does help this game out a lot. Like, I'm the type of person where I come home from work, maybe I work an 8-hour shift, and I don't want to sit down, or if I'm done, or I get done doing my homework for 4 hours and I'm doing a bunch of reading and stuff like that, I don't want to sit down and play another game where I have to read for another 8 hours of my day. I just want to sit down and relax and watch the game and what it has to offer me and play it, instead of just sit there and read text all day. So I think that the direction that Wuthering Waves is going is actually really good, and I hope that with future version updates, and especially main story quests, that they continue to split the story into 2 parts, just because when I forgot about that the story was split up into 2 parts, and I was like, oh man, we gotta wait till 3 or 2.5 for the second half, and I was like, wait, actually the second half of the story is coming out this patch, so it gave me something to look forward to. So I'm really excited for the future Wuthering Waves, and I hope that they continue to go in this direction. Again, Wuthering Waves, please keep up the high quality as far as for facial expression and great dialogue and just seeing transitions and all that kind of stuff. And then for my final review of the game and just my overall thoughts, if I was to rate this story patch, I would probably give it a 7.7 out of 10. A couple of things to knock it down from like an 8 out of 10, especially for a gacha story, is probably the choice of music. And then in the live stream, if you guys had watched the live stream, you could see that there was a little snippet where they showed Scar. Now, a lot of people were really excited, myself included, because we haven't seen Scar since like 1.0 or something like that. And so I'm actually really looking forward to having a character like Scar come out and see what he is going to, how he's going to be incorporated into this story. Now, me personally, them not having Scar in the second half of the story kind of brought down some of the points for me, just because I did have kind of that expectation to actually see him more than like a couple seconds in the actual story. This is a spoiler, but to see him more than a couple seconds in the story was a little bit of a disappointment. But other than that, I thought the story was absolutely phenomenal. They did a wonderful job, and keep it up. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.